Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration, Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic, Deputy Vice Chancellor Research, Innovation and Strategic Partnerships, Registrar, University Librarian, Provost of the College of Medicine, Provost of the Postgraduate College, the Dean, Faculty of these Social Sciences, Deans of other faculties and students, Rectors of institutes and centers, Heads of departments, the 10th and the 12th Vice Chancellor of this university, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The 545th University of Ibadan Inaugural Lecture will be delivered this evening by Professor Irene Pogoson of the Department of Political Science on behalf of the Faculty of Social Sciences. Professor Irene Pogoson was born on Friday, the 8th of July 1960, to the family of late Sir Albert Yu and Lady Cecilia E. Oboite. She attended Ibadan Primary School, Yale Grammar School, Modete Ibadan, and International School University of Ibadan. She holds a BA Honours degree in History from this university. Thereafter, she did the mandatory National Youth Service Program NYSC in Kwara State before returning to the University of Ibadan for a master's and doctoral degrees in political science. She started her working career in 1982 with the presidential panel on Nigeria's independent history project. Professor Pogoson joined the services of the University of Ibadan as the first female lecturer in the Department of Political Science in July of the year 2000. She rose through the ranks to become full professor in October 2018. In 2022, she became the first female head of the department. In 2008, Professor Pogoson attended the John F. Kennedy School of Government Executive Education Capacity Building Program for Governors and the Frederick Ebert Foundation New York Ford Academy for Young International Policy Analysts. She is also a beneficiary of the Nairobi-based Partnership for Africa Social and Governance Research PASA training on pedagogical methods for teaching public policy. Professor Pogoson has served the University of Ibadan in various capacities, the departmental, faculty, and university levels. She has been chairperson of Postgraduate Affairs and Examination Committee, Department of Political Science, from the year 2010 to 2014, and a member of the Finance Committee, the Department of Political Science, from 2009 to 2012. Faculty of these Social Sciences, Postgraduate Affairs Committee from 2010 to 2014, and thereafter from 2022 to date. Also member Faculty of these Social Sciences Planning Committee from 2001 to 2005, and also from 2022 to date. Faculty of these Social Sciences Student Leadership Development Program 2003 to date. Appointments and Promotions Committee, Department of Political Science, 2011 to date. And Faculty of these Social Sciences Appointments and Promotions Committee, Academic Staff from 2020 to date. Professor Pogoson is a member of the University of Ibadan Sabbatical Committee from 2013 to date. She has been a member of Senate of this university since 2012. Outside the University of Ibadan, from 2005 to June 2007, Professor Pogoson was a policy analyst from governance with the Independent Policy Group, a policy think tank for President Olusegun Obasanjo. Between 2009 and 2013, he was on the Ibadan Index Advisory Council on the Ibadan Index of African Governance of the ECHO Ibadan Foundation. He is also a member of the Scientific Committee of the Council for the Development of the Social Sciences Research in Africa, from June 2016 to 2019. Professor Pogoson was a resource person to the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NIST School Jobs, 2013 to 2019, visiting lecturer to the Nigerian Defense College, 2007 to 2012, and the Defense Intelligence College, Abuja, in 2016. Professor Pogoson has served as external examiner to a number of institutions and consulted for a number of international donor agencies, institutions, and non-governmental organizations, including the Department of Political Science of Ibadan University, 2014 to 2015, United States Agency for International Development, USAID, Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, the Frederick Ebert Stiftung, Action Aid International, National Democratic Institute, Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, WADA, the Initiative for Women's Studies in Nigeria, Center for Gender Studies and Advocacy, University of Ghana, and the Electoral Institute. He is on the editorial advisory board of several journals. Professor Irene Pogoson is a member of a number of learned societies and professional associations, including the Nigerian Political Science Association, Association of African Political Science, International Political Science Association, Nigerian Society for International Affairs, and Society for International Relations Awareness. Our current professional and advisory roles include membership of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, technical assistance, Hub International Review Committee, and the Nigerian African China Research Network. Professor Pogoson's teaching experience spans over 2 decades, covering intellectually diverse environments. She is widely traveled, and she has attended many international and local conferences. Her research journey outside Nigeria has taken her to several times to the United States, the United Kingdom, South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Senegal, Egypt, Sudan, Ghana, Mauritius, and Ethiopia, among others. Professor Pogoson's research interests are in international politics, with particular focus on foreign policy analysis, strategic studies, and gender studies. She is a recipient of the University of Ibadan Senate Research Grant 2012-2013 and co-recipient of the National Research Foundation of the Tertiary Education Trust in 2020. She has about 60 publications to her credit, including journal articles, a co-edited book, chapters in books, and monographs. Professor Pogoson has supervised 11 PhD theses and over 100 master's dissertations. All our PhD supervisees are in the academia, with 4 of them now full professors. Professor Irene Pogoson is happily married to Professor Irene Pogoson of the Institute of African Studies, University of Ibadan. They are blessed with wonderful and loving children and grandchildren. I'm happy to inform you that their youngest grandchild, Oluwatamidore, was born on 10 January 2024 and that Professor Pogoson concluded this inaugural lecture while visiting Cambodia. Ladies and gentlemen, and I invite Professor Pogoson to present our inaugural lecture titled Power and Gender Relations in a Changing International Political System. Professor Pogoson.
Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic, Deputy Vice Chancellor Research, Innovation and Strategic Partnerships, the Registrar, Librarian, Bossa, Provost of the College of Medicine and of the Postgraduate College, Deans of the Faculty of the Social Sciences, Deans of other faculties and of students, Directors of institutes, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. With immense gratitude to God, I stand before you today to deliver the 545th inaugural lecture of the University of Ibadan and the 14th of the series of inaugural lectures of the 2022-2023 academic session on behalf of the Faculty of the Social Sciences. This is the 11th inaugural lecture from the Department of Political Science and the first in the specialization of international relations. The first inaugural lecture of the department was by Professor in 1975, titled Skepticism and Political Values. I consider it a great honor to give this inaugural lecture as the first female lecturer and professor from the foremost Department of Political Science in Nigeria. This inaugural lecture affords me the opportunity to give an account of my stewardship as an academic staff of the university over the last 24 years and to share information about my research. My lecture covers my research interests in international politics, Nigeria's foreign policy, and gender studies. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir. This is my third opportunity to present a public lecture at this university. The first was the main departmental lecture of the Department of Political Science in 2013. In that lecture, I focused on terrorism and Nigeria's national security. The second lecture was the 22nd faculty lecture of the Faculty of the Social Sciences in 2018. In that lecture, I argued that the rise of other powers were threatening the unipolar hegemony of the United States of America by creating conditions for a new multipolar world order. This is truer today than ever before. My lecture today, The World in Transition, Understanding Power in the International Political System, stems from my inherent interest in international politics, as exemplified by the earlier mentioned faculty lecture. Against the background of an analysis of the transformative impact of the Second World War, I intend to explicate the defining features of the current international relations system and to beam our focus on the forces that are shaping ambitions of resurgent and rising powers. In so doing, I will provide an overview of the transformation of international power relations from the dissolution of the bipolar world order to the emergence of a multipolar arrangement. I will also elucidate how the spectrum of influential actors in the international system has expanded and altered its power structure. In the context of the foregoing, I analyze Nigeria's foreign policy and regional influence within this matrix of a dynamic and turbulent world order. Thereby, I highlight the enduring as well as the changing factors that shape Nigeria's foreign policy orientations. In the third section of this lecture, I discuss the core issues arising from my research in my secondary area of scholarship, gender studies. I expand the discussion on emerging global change to encompass developments and trends in the political involvement of women in the democratic process. I argue that the resulting absence of women's representation in the decision-making processes in Nigeria creates an inherent self-selection mechanism which disproportionately favors men in both the realm of domestic and foreign policy. My research contribution has been in 3 areas. The first is that it has grown the understanding of the dynamics of the global political system and the emergence of a new world order. My findings underscore a world in transition, with states and non-state actors competing for advantageous positions in the hierarchy of power. Within this emergent world order, my research established that Nigeria's foreign policy designs and ambitions are guided and constrained by domestic socio-political dynamics, as well as existing or potential external challenges and opportunities, and advise a direction for the conduct and administration of Nigeria's foreign policy, which includes recognizing the value of education as an important aspect of the soft power of the state. In terms of women and political participation, I expand the debate for mainstreaming gender beyond the mere inclusion of more women in public life to the imperative of transforming gender relations within the state and state institutions and structures. Power and the international system. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir. The global political system consists of numerous actors, each with varying degrees of autonomy, engaging in structured interactions to exert influence on one another. Their independent decisions and policies serve as catalysts for each other, either encouraging or limiting the actions of others. However, the high degree of interdependent interactions among the actors means that no actor is fully autonomous. The relationship between the level of interdependence in a system and the degree of autonomy enjoyed by others was observed by Rousseau when he wrote that the states of Europe touch each other at so many points that no one of them can move without jolting the others. He added that as their ties become more closely woven, their variances become more deadly. Given the highly developed and globalized communication and transportation technology, given the existence of weapons capable of mutual destruction, and the high degree of economic interdependence that shape state relations, Rousseau's insight is especially pertinent today. The world order as seen today has passed through numerous notable temporal variations in the global power dynamics, with different nations, regions, and groups exerting various degrees of influence. These changes inevitably reconstitute power relations among proximate and distant actors and have depended on players and actors. In fact, historically, all enduring international orders have depended on stable power distributions and the fundamental understanding of international norms of behavior among states. These normative accords serve to moderate the underlying structural anarchy inherent in sovereignty, which could otherwise spiral into an all-out Obasian war of all against all. The centrality of power in the scholarship of international relations is uncontested. International relations scholars do not agree on many concepts, but they all conceive power as the defining concept of the discipline. According to Morgan, international politics, like all policies, is a struggle for power. Whatever the ultimate aims of international politics, power is always the immediate aim. Theories of power in international relations have identified 5 main categories of power. Material power, which includes military and economic assets. Relational power, which measures a country's influence over other actors and outcomes. Structural power, or the ability to shape the conditions under which other states operate. Soft power, which involves the normative appeal of a country's ideology, education, culture, and institutions. And lastly, a state's capacity to extract resources from its domestic political system. the rise and decline of great states in the international system and wars. Among the states are dominant subjects in the study of international relations. Although theories and empirical investigations of this phenomena abound, few have coalesced into a research tradition as prolific as the one associated with the power transition theory. The power transition theory was introduced by Ogansi and aims to explain the causes and consequences of power changes between states. The theory lays the groundwork for understanding hierarchical international orders and how transitional phases affect power distribution among states. It also argues that power transition happens when a rising state confronts a dominating state and strives to replace it as a new hegemon. Power transition theory thus remains an invaluable framework for comprehending and assessing changes in global power dynamics. Evolution of the contemporary international system. Mr. Vice Chancellor said, the evolution of the contemporary international system can be traced to the Second World War of 1939 to 1945. The Second World War lasted only 6 years, but those 6 years witnessed some of the most catastrophic events ever known to the Western civilization. After the Second World War, the international system became totally different, diverging significantly from the pre-colonial Eurocentric classical international system of the 19th century. Before the war, the forces in the Cold War framework, most especially the conclusion of bipolar competition, the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the reunification of Germany, significant nuclear disarmament, and the decline of communism all contributed to ushering in a new era of global politics marked by American unipolarity and the dominance of capitalism and liberal democracy. The United States' position during the 2 decades following the Cold War was one of economic and military dominance. However, the events and trends that manifested themselves post-September 11, 2001 demonstrated America's vulnerability, just as the American economy experienced recession and self-pronouncement of the beginning of the end of the American single superpower status. Furthermore, the world began to acknowledge the existence and power of non-state actors, which were capable of exerting significant influence on the behavior of major state actors. The emerging global system. The emerging geopolitical realities of the 21st century indicate a shift towards a new multipolar global system. Economic and political powers are becoming diffused as fast-growing nations like China, Russia, India, Brazil, Turkey, Singapore, and a number of others emerge. Virtually unnoticed, China emerged from its cocoon, embraced capitalism, and began to stretch its economic potential to the rest of the world, poised to challenge the U.S. position politically, economically, and militarily. Similarly, a newly emboldened Russia experienced a resurgence, reclaiming its position on the global stage by transitioning from the peripheral position it fell into following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, towards occupying a central role in the global system. Globally, a multitude of forces are reshaping the world as a plethora of new countries and actors are emerging as influential global contenders. The traditional division between the core and periphery, comprising affluent, industrialized nations and developing countries respectively, is increasingly fading. An economic and political power shift is underway, marked by a diminishing influence of the West and the corresponding rise of the East. The emerging economies are ascending as regional powers and even attaining global influence and actively reshaping the world order. Examples are the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the BRICS Group. Both organizations have the potential to establish the groundwork for providing an alternative to the Western-led global system a new bloc capable of challenging Western influence in certain regions. Based on the primary assumptions of structural realism, that the international system is characterized by anarchy, and states are unitary actors seeking to survive in this anarchic system, it appears that the emerging order of several great powers will lead to a return to the shifting alliances and instabilities of the multipolar era that existed prior to the Second World War. Also, based on the expectations of post-liberalism, we may expect an increased weakening of great powers as greater participation by social forces inflicts havoc on their social cohesion, political stability, and state autonomy. This may engender the rise of various multi-purpose regional alliances and global cooperation. In the midst of this unstable geopolitical environment, there may emerge a new world order which is neither underpinned by realism nor liberalism, but rather defined by restraints and freedom of action. Nigeria's place in the new world order. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, in the struggle for power in the international system, small and developing states are becoming vulnerable and impacted negatively. This was evident in the Cold War, when smaller nations were destabilized and their governments routinely overthrown in the endless proxy confrontations between the superpowers. It is therefore pertinent in a lecture on the volatile international political system to assess the prospects of Nigeria in the current and emergent world order. Due to her vast physical size, huge population, and abundant natural resources, Nigeria has long been expected to assume a prominent role in both global and African politics. Consequently, successive administrations and the articulate public have often espoused the belief that Nigeria possesses a manifest destiny to emerge as a leading voice and actor in African and international affairs. However, several challenging issues have dominated Nigeria's foreign policy across various governments, with each government having distinctive priorities and style. Although guided by the same general principles, the successive administrations have not necessarily shared the same perception of the international system or conception of Nigeria's role in it, nor of the strategies for attaining our foreign policy objectives. The focus, nature, and dynamism of their foreign policy engagements have been steered by contending domestic, socio-political, economic, security, and external challenges, which over the years have hampered Nigeria's expected performance in the international scene. The implication of this development is that Nigeria is not appropriately positioned in the new global order, and that there is an urgent need to re-strategize and reformulate Nigeria's foreign policy to capture the internal and external dynamics of the Nigerian state and maintain respect and relevance in the international system. A new beginning? The administration of President Bola Tinubu came into power at a historical period of global geopolitical and geostrategic alignments and realignments, which are all dramatically shaping Nigeria's foreign policy and external relations. The Tinubu administration unveiled its foreign policy agenda termed Nigeria's 4D Renewed Foreign Policy Doctrine, comprising democracy, demography, development, and diaspora. The 4D Foreign Policy Doctrine is said to represent a deliberate shift towards more international, intentional, dynamic, and value-driven foreign relations. While an assessment of President Tinubu's foreign policy direction may be premature, a clearer articulation of the essentials of the 4D Doctrine in terms of its achievable concrete policies and actions is urgently required. Clearly, repositioning Nigeria as a global actor and achieving the goals of the 4D Doctrine requires fixing Nigeria's domestic challenges, tackling the prevalence of corruption Nigeria and Nigerians, and building a strong economy and currency. Moreover, it is essentially important to silence the guns within the states as well as throughout the Gulf of Guinea and the Sahel. At this juncture, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I will speak on my secondary area of scholarship, which is gender and political participation in Nigeria. Women and political participation in Nigeria. The global power structure created by the struggle for political transition has and will have great consequences for the struggle for gender equality. From time immemorial, the contribution of women to the development of society is comparable to that of men. Yet, their participation in formal and informal structures and processes where decisions are made remains largely insignificant. According to the Bourgeois, representation of the world like the world itself is the work of men. They describe it from their own point of view, which they confuse with absolute truth. Thus, the continued exclusion of female actors and their experiences in politics radically faults the field and calls for the dismantling of internal power structures that drive gender inequality and hinder societal progress. Issues in gender participation in Nigerian politics is replete with continued marginalization and disempowerment of women in the political process. Following the transition from one administration and political structure to another, the participation of Nigerian women politically has remained dreadfully low, with women occupying below 10% of political posts since 1960. This is an eloquent testament of the persistence of male dominance and gender prejudice in the political realm. Probably not the University of Ibadan. The outcomes of the 2023 elections specifically provoked misgivings regarding the participation and representation of women and underscored the persistent systemic restrictions on women's representation in Nigerian party politics. As new conceptions of public and political life emerge, and as the world goes through a geopolitical and geoeconomic transition, women are increasingly moving from the other room and the kitchen to the limelight in the global governance processes. Male-dominated structures are no longer able to meet the challenges of the world is facing today. What will tomorrow's world look like? Predicting the future of global politics is challenging, but evidently we are living through a period of radical changes in the global power structure. Where it may take us has no precise answer. With diverse interests and identities of emerging powers worldwide, it is probable that we will witness the formation of a unified but adaptable counter-hegemonic bloc, flexible unilateral groups and forums, or the fragmentation of the current system into several small worlds and regional blocs. Clearly, the world is no longer polar or bipolar. The prevailing trajectory of change does appear to be leading towards the multipolar world, where Western dominance is no longer assured. Events ranging from Russia's invasion of Ukraine to China's construction of artificial islands in the South China Sea, as well as the global economic and political impact of new technologies like artificial intelligence and the development of lethal autonomous weapons, suggests that the emerging global order may be approaching a critical stage. The prevalence of nuclear weapons and the gradual retreat from established arms control agreements that have fostered global stability for decades also represent an ongoing peril to the survival of humanity. Another problem to global peace and security has emanated from non-state actors of forces like ISIS, Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the like. These non-state actors represent a challenge that is likely to escalate over the next several decades. Of great concern is NATO's eastward expansion in Europe, as well as the war in Ukraine, both of which suggest that we're living through a new and dangerous edition of the Cold War. Also disconcerting is the Hamas-Israeli war and the US-UK airstrike on the Houthi military sites in Yemen. These constitute great threats to global security. As middle and small powers as well as non-state actors seriously threaten and undermine global security and peace, nobody can predict where the dominoes will fall. However, a return to a multipolar world characterized by conflict is more than a fable. It is increasingly becoming more probable. On the African continent, over the past decades, uprisings, coups, and the activities of insurgents hold serious threats and risks for the broader region and Sahel security landscape. They also have a tendency to attract self-serving paternalistic powers, particularly the US, China, and Russia. Certainly, the ferment in the Sahel, especially the withdrawal of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger from ECOWAS, calls for a major rethink of Nigeria's foreign policy. Two developments support this imperative. The first is Morocco's effort in December 2023 to build its ties with other African countries and promote and facilitate access of the Sahel countries to the Atlantic Ocean. The second development, also in December 2023, is a case instituted by South Africa against Israel at the World Court concerning the alleged Israeli genocidal conduct in the war engaged with Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Can Nigeria play a significant role in these two situations? For me, to realize the often repeated claim that Nigeria is the giant of Africa, Nigeria has to find ways to influence the processes, structures, and behaviors of the international system. As the new world order takes shape, an important lesson from history is for Nigeria to adopt a more dynamic foreign policy that considers the misalignment of domestic politics, economy, and foreign relations. In other words, political leaders must make democracy work by strengthening its processes and institutions, as well as promoting inclusive political participation. National decision-making structures, including foreign policy making, must be gender responsive. Education as soft power. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, there is an irrefutable link between global power standing and education. A nation standing in the global arena is intricately linked to the strength of its education sector and the equitable compensation of its educators. At its core, Nigeria's education sector serves as the bedrock of its human capital formation, laying the groundwork for individual advancement and national progress. However, without adequate investment and support, the sector faces significant challenges that resonate across the country's socio-political and economic landscape. In the context of Nigeria's global positioning, a faltering education sector undermines the country's ability to compete effectively in the global marketplace. Furthermore, the underpayment of university lecturers, for instance, and the resulting brain drain deprive Nigeria of the expertise and talent needed to drive innovation and propel the nation forward in the emergent political structure. In essence, Nigeria's place in the world is intricately linked to the vitality of its education sector and the fair treatment of its educators. By prioritizing investment in education and by ensuring the equitable compensation of lecturers, Nigeria can enhance its global competitiveness and strengthen its influence on the world stage. Moreover, in the light of the expanding polycentric nature of the emerging multipolar world order, countries like the US, China, India, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and other East Asian countries are employing soft power, like education, as the engine of prosperity Ironically, while the growing number of nations are creating globally competitive educational systems, the wave of incessant kidnapping of students in Nigeria poses serious threats to the Nigerian educational system. Only last week, about 300 pupils and teachers were kidnapped from Kaduna State by bandits. This phenomenon weakens the education system and diminishes Nigeria's power and standing on the world stage. No country grows beyond the level of its educational system. Students cannot be forced to choose between education and security. Protecting vulnerable school environments is crucial. Security must be ensured for the entire educational system as well as its infrastructure. Evidently, Nigeria's education system must be completely re-engineered if Nigeria is to meet the demands of the present cutting-edge, high-tech economy and maintain a favorable position in the dynamics of political power. Acknowledgement. For all the opportunities God has given me and the people I have met in my life's journey. A few are limited, but where I inadvertently omitted some, I offer my heartfelt apology and sincere thank you. To my parents, the late Sir Albert and Lady Cecilia Abolition. Thank you for raising us in a home filled with love, joy, discipline, and prayer, and for making every moment of my life special. Even with the passing of time, your sweet memories will never fade from my heart. To my second parents, the late Mr. and Mrs. J. Pogoson, I thank you for loving me wholeheartedly, and I bless your memories. I also thank my teachers, lecturers, and mentors at several levels of my education. I cannot but acknowledge the importance of the University of Ibadan in my life. Being born and raised on the university campus was a collection of stimulating experiences that shaped my life and career. As the first female lecturer in the department and currently the first female head of the department, I have worked with wonderful colleagues and non-teaching staff, and I thank them all. To my colleagues and associates who gave up their precious time to read and contribute to various drafts and discussions of this lecture, I thank you. Over the years, the Faculty of Social Sciences, the University of Ibadan, and the wider academic community beyond the University of Ibadan, I have been blessed with supportive friends and associates. You all have touched my life in different ways, and I am grateful. I express my heartfelt gratitude to all the institutions and organizations home and abroad that I have worked with. I also acknowledge my students, current and former. I heartfelt both my former students for their support during my tenure as the head of the department. I value the confidence of two of my female students who sometimes last year confided in me that I had been diagnosed with breast cancer. The young ladies are the reason why I organized the breast cancer awareness sensitization program last year. This program should turn into an annual event. I thank the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Professor Irene, for representing the Vice Chancellor at the program. I cannot but acknowledge our close family friends and neighbors, especially our recently departed friends, Arakno Aketi and Dr. Romkemi. May they continue to rest in peace. The DDLs and members of the Day Girls Grammar School Old Girls Association, 1972 to 1976, I salute you all. I thank the clergy of my church family and also at the Anglican Church Bolivia, especially my beloved brethren in the children's department. I acknowledge Professor T.O. Obudina, Professor Bade Omodolu, and Dr. O.O. Ayoko, and their team of doctors and nurses at the UCH and the Banking Hospital, where I underwent major surgery in 2010 and 2021. No one could have Catholic, thank you for your unwavering parental roles in our lives, even as your friends are passed on. I thank our in-laws for giving us such delightful songs and for loving our daughters unconditionally. I also thank my uncles, aunties, and their spouses, especially Dr. and Mrs. Ibadan. I am grateful for the immeasurable memories I've made with my beloved Ogo siblings. I remember our dear departed sister Joy and pray that her sweet soul continues to rest in peace. My love goes to my Pogoson siblings. Over the years, you have been amazing and loving. Our children who are watching online, Matthew and Waya, Nandi and Nikari, show me and this is well. You are my rock and my world. I am incredibly proud and blessed to be a part of your life. To our darling grandchildren, Rulu, Chimamanda, Menga, Nziara, Oluwajosi, and Oluwatamilowe, the joy you bring to our lives is indescribable. My personal gift from God. Without inspiring me through our journey together, you are my soulmate. Let us continue to enjoy the gift of love to Almighty. I love you. My God, my Redeemer, my Savior, I raise my voice in honor and adoration. I am humbled and eternally grateful for the saving grace and mercy in my life. And so, Mr. Vice Chancellor, as I bring this lecture to a close, I declare that from the moment I wake up, with every breath that I can muster, I will sing of the